Welcome back to the weekly news roundup. The second topic, of course, the full stream is down below if you want to see the whole thing, comments and all. Of course, this section here, we're going to be talking about the future of education and where AI is fitting into all of this nonsense. And I got to say that when I read this article, it was interesting to see. It's like that old joke, you know, the scientists, like the archaeologists, the paleontologists, all these guys, they're all climbing the top of this mountain. They finally reach the top, and the pastor's already up there cooking a fire, offering them fish for breakfast. Because it's like they come to this conclusion that kids really only need a couple hours of instruction and then a whole bunch of life skills. Yeah, that's what the Christians have been telling you for a long time. In fact, that's where a lot of homeschooling networks come from, which I have a lot of experience in. But of course, they're doing this in the most weird way ever. And so let's go ahead and dig in. And this is from The Guardian. And Robin Bueller brings us this article here. And this is inside San Francisco's new AI school. Is this the future of education? So in this school, you do not have any teachers. You have coaches. And the coaches are just there to make sure, I guess, the kids aren't killing each other, things like that. And basically the AI watches everything the kids do and then gives them up to 2 hours of instruction. And then the rest of the school day, they are just learning life skills. So it's effectively the model that of every homeschooler I've ever known, which has always been more adjusted than any public school kid I ever know. You know, you go to the homeschool kids, yeah, they sit down, they have a couple hours of work. They're getting just the basic relevant things. Here's your problems. Great, we got it. Let's go bake a cake now. And so these kids, they come out learning how to cook. They come out learning how to clean. They have a lot more innovation. And they're not basic members of the small tribe fractions that happened in Lord of the Flies. All right, and that's really my big problem with the education system, as we were discussing this last night, is the modern education system. First and foremost, we have to say this. The modern education system here in America is based on Dewey and Hall. They were two communists, and they wanted to effectively produce a system that produced obedient, subordinate workers. And this is why your children are required to get up at some god-awful time in the morning, go off while they're still half asleep into school, spend an ungodly amount of their day at the school. Half of that time is literally doing nothing important. And then they come home where they get a couple meals, do a couple little things for a couple hours, and then go to sleep, wash, rinse, and repeat with a day off for the weekend for good behavior. And this entire educational model was based on producing what they needed for factory workers in the Industrial Revolution. And it was all based on effectively some communist ideology of everybody putting in for their position. And so the whole school focus gets you geared towards getting up, staying in one space for the whole day, and not doing anything critical thinking, and then preparing you for a quote unquote career where you spend the entirety of your productive life. So I'm writing this from my van in the middle of the desert at the edge of some mountains because I decided to critically think a long time ago. And so, in fact, there's an excellent topic on this. It's not just that. That's one of the subchapters, one of the chapters in the book. The book is called Dancing in the Dark. Unfortunately, there's a couple books of that title. You want to look for the one that's written by 5 different authors, and it addresses the youth culture effectively. Because what has happened as a consequence of what we do is we send all of these kids, mostly unsupervised, into a school. We have like the bare amount of adults there that usually keeps them from injuring each other. And then effectively warring factions and tribes form all throughout, and they develop this culture. And then what happens now is we have widened the culture where we're trying to get the kids into these big groups younger, and we're trying to keep them in longer. And so now college, even in my day, when I was a young man going off to college, even then it was expected college is going to take you like 4 years, maybe 5. Nowadays, it's like college is expected to take you 6 or 7 years because you need the experience. And of course, the colleges don't mind because they're getting all this free government funding money. And then we get out with a whole bunch of people with debt up to their eyeballs that can't have any job except serving coffee at Starbucks, well, until they started laying everybody off. And then at some point in time, we looked down at the system, and now they're all screaming, they're going, you need to forgive all of our loans. No, y'all took them out. All right. I figured out how to get through school without having to take on all those loans, and it is still actually possible today. You just don't go to college for the experience. You go to college to work. You get out in 4 years, and you go to the cheaper schools because it doesn't really matter which school you go to. In fact, oftentimes the cheaper ones have better education. So we've gotten to this point where the education system is basically floundering into sheer stupidity. And in the American education statistics, what we're seeing is that the amount of money we are spending per student is absolutely skyrocketing, and our scores are falling off like a rock. In fact, I watch a lot of the teachers talking about why they're quitting teaching and things like this. And it boils down to, they got high school kids who can't even read at the first grade level. And I understand this. Unfortunately, I know somebody whose kids fall into this whole giant line. And is it that they literally, every one of them, have these serious learning disabilities? Or is it that they weren't pushed and read to when they were young? You know what? I'm not going to take a position one way or the other, but I am saying the education system we have is not working. And so it's begging people to come up with different ideas, and this was one idea. Well, let's just go ahead and let AI teach all of our kids, and they can do this in only 2 hours, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time just basically teaching them life skills. So we've gone full circle back to doing your education at home as a, basic, learning your basic things, doing a couple hours of work, and then helping your parents in the house and learning the life skills. We've gone full circle, except this is a private school that costs $40,000 a year. So, all right. In the world of tech innovation, the tech innovation epicenter, AI-powered private school has made headlines for its unabashedly embracing technology. Now, I read through this. They say the K-8 students in this fall, the newest outpost nation network of 14 nationwide private schools. Its learning model entailed just 2 hours of focused academic work per day. And that's interesting. And I agree with that. I don't think kids need more than that. Spend like half an hour. In fact, I used to do that in grad school. I would come home just to stay sharp on things. I'd spend an hour a day, half hour each on 2 separate topics, and it kept me extraordinarily sharp for a long time. In fact, I actually did have a calculus. I did take the calculus book out of the van. I didn't have a lot of chance to do that, and I was working on some other bigger projects. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But yeah, for a while in this van, I was actually sitting here at night and doing calculus problems for fun. I know I have a demented sense of humor, but it was my reality. That's whatever. I have some Greek textbooks up there still. I still do have those with me. All right. So this is called Alpha School. It's not alone in its efforts to incorporate AI into the classroom around the U.S. Schools are experimenting with AI as a tool that can assist teachers with curriculum development, identifying learning trends, and even boost student engagement. The Alpha School's website suggests a futuristic learning model. AI tools make it so that students only need to spend 2 hours a day on traditional subjects such as history and math. So basically the AI decides what level to give them, and then it moves them on at the pace that works with them. And then they said, after that, the rest of the day is dedicated to learning life skills, which is done through creative activities such as designing, permitting, and operating a food truck. That promote teamwork, social skills, and financial literacy. Instead of receiving instruction from teachers, students are supervised by guides who coach them through the otherwise self-directed process. So these elements aren't completely novel, they say. Between the working on group projects, socializing, and taking breaks, students at traditional schools spend an average of the same amount of time on focused core curriculum, according to an assistant professor at Harvard researching how this model works. And so before we dig in a little bit deeper, I want to look into the school. First and foremost, I could not find the exact AI models they're using, but this company, there's basically this incestuous relationship with like 4 different tech companies, and all their directors are all shared upon them, which is one of the criticisms for the company, is that it seems like an inbred company, but it would appear they're probably using Llama, so self-hosted local models. That is the only guess I can have, and that's why the Llama logo is on the thumbnail. I could not find any reference to any AI companies at all, except for one of the subsidiary companies to this company had a reference to using 4 local hosted models of Llama. And so that's kind of it. But their privacy policy is downright dystopian. If you thought Google's privacy policy was bad, if you thought System 1's privacy policy was bad, oh no. This one basically says, yeah, we're going to watch, monitor, and store everything about your child. Like, literally. I didn't actually highlight anything here. I should have. It relies on extensive data collection and analysis in order to assist with achieving the desires, similar to use of data collection analysis in professional sports to improve and gain performance edge. We may use every available lawful means to improve student performance. The data collection and processing described as privacy policy and utilizing as part of the company technology are integral to the experience and a necessary part of the overall program. Some specific examples of possible data collection analysis: test scores, of course, recordings. All groups, one-on-one and online meeting sessions may be recorded with audio and visual, including interactions on Zoom and any other similar system. Activity tracking, screenshots, including browser, screen, computer activity, will be taken while the student is working. Keyboard, mouse activity will be tracked. Webcams, computer, microphones, online tools will be used to record the student. Productivity gamification, gamifying the productivity, may be tracked in order to display the leaderboard to users. Oh boy. We intend to proceed with additional data collection in the future or specific student cases, which may involve the use of additional software, hardware, or mobile phone applications usage. If a student has poor sleep habits impacting learning, sleep tracking using iPhone or activity tracker may be implemented in order to analyze and suggest improvements. If students are taught meditation, if students are taught meditation in order to encourage a focused state, headband monitor and app may be used to collect data for that analysis. Wowzers! Of course, they tried to open one. They tried to open both a brick and mortar charter school and a cyber charter school in Pennsylvania. My state had the guts to say, nah. And ultimately what they said is, yeah, there's actually not enough research into if this is actually a useful education model. But that's kind of what these researchers, Ying Zhu at Harvard, are researching right now. They kind of want to evaluate, is this actually a method that is functional? So AI is brought in as a layer that helps understand students' pacing and then makes suggestions on what might be best. Next, this person explained, most of the learning AI is not student facing. So it's basically the AI works in the background with all the data and then promotes various apps. Now, I will stop right here. Alpha School is not brand new. I know AI is only a couple years old. Alpha schools are about a decade old at this point in time. In fact, one of the articles I read I think it was a Medium post. It was either Medium or Substack. I can't remember. I read one of them. I didn't include it in the article list here. But the journalist, who's actually a professional journalist now, actually went to Alpha schools when she was in middle school. And so she was doing an analysis of it and how it helped her prepare. And so this is not a brand new school. It is a little over a decade old, but the implementation of AI is fairly new. They've always been a computer program model. They were just utilizing the coaches to decide what the students learned. Now it's the AI that is directing what the students are learning. So, you still need the coaches there to make sure Lord of the Flies doesn't happen. So their job might be safe for now, at least until the leader kid comes out with a spear and, does him in. But, we'll see. Perhaps the most importantly, qualified adult is present in every classroom. Now, here's the thing. They say qualified adult, but they don't qualify what that means because the adult is not a teacher. The adult is not a subject matter expert. So are they bringing on psychologists? It wasn't clear. I wasn't able to find exactly what that is. But they say qualified adult is a present, fostering some level of interpersonal learning, which Agnew says should remain a vital part of the school experience. Agnew wonders whether AI component of the schools is being deliberately played up to attract parents and students who fear their children could miss the AI boat, and of course to generate a profit. Again, these private schools are $40,000 a year to attend. So In the 2-Hour Learning website, this is one of those incestuous companies behind them. The basically 2-Hour Learning site is it's more of like a lobbyist website to push this model of education. Alpha students consistently score in the top 1 to 2% nationally, and claims 90% of Alpha students love going to school. Now, here is, of course, the problem with that is they are going to be limited to a very small subsection of the population if it costs $40,000, and parents that will spend $40,000 to send their children to a private school like this are also always more involved in parental education, in their education of their kids. And one of the statistics that we've known long time studying academics and statistics, by the way, this has been a hobby of mine for a long time. I've actually studied academics, school education and academics and stuff for a long time. I've read some amazing books on the subject. From Losing Generations was who was the university? I want to say Associated Press, but it wasn't them. It was one of the scientific organizations did an amazing job looking at why kids were falling out of school. Charles Sykes' Dumbing Down Our Kids was an amazing book. In fact, if I read that book at the time I bought it, I would probably be like, that's interesting. But I read it like 20 years later, and I was like, this is groundbreaking stuff. And it was quite incredible. But here's the thing we know. Anytime parents are involved in the education of their children, they score better. They always score better. So when you have kids that are just shuffled off to public school and their parents are barely paying attention, they come home, those kids always score on the lower end. So it's not surprising. Is it Alpha's model that causes them to score 1 to 2% in the top national? Or is it the fact that they have highly involved parents that are spending $40,000 a year on their education? And if you're going to spend $40,000 in the educating of your child, well, you had better put something into that. Okay. And so we don't know exactly what is in there. And that's one of the reasons Pennsylvania rejected them, as they said that, and one of the criticisms for them at large is that all of their research about how great they've done, every bit of it is done internally. There is no external research. And I think that that's what they're doing at Harvard. They might be doing that, as they did quote a Harvard researcher in here quite a bit. And I didn't actually catch if that person's studying the schools or if they're just commenting on this. I don't know. They say they reject criticisms the school's high achievement record is because students are from highly resourced backgrounds, says its model has a potential. Now, there are a few quotes like this that causes me to say Alpha's got some serious problems, and I'd probably keep your children away from it. They say, oh no, it's not because of this. We have no data outside of ourselves, but it's definitely not because of this. It's like, okay then. At Harvard, Zhu's own research shows that learning with AI can lead to very different outcomes depending on individuals' disposition. Children who are more self-directed and confident are more likely to use AI to enhance their understanding, while those who lack confidence are more likely to use AI to generate answers and circumvent critical thinking. And that's my big problem with AI, is it definitely harms critical thinking if we are not careful. So Rose Yang, a researcher at OpenAI, whose PhD looked at machine learning applications in and educational settings, raised questions about whether an app-based curriculum can serve all learners equally, especially as K-8 students are developing foundational skills, effectively saying that this model of education probably isn't all that good. They said this model for schooling would probably work really well for kids who are quite advanced already. So if you are already an advanced kid, like, you're from a top tier family that has $40,000 a year to send you to private school and is probably invested in your education, that student is starting school ahead of a student who's just going to public school every single time, the statistics show. Now, there's another question. What about AI and hallucinations? This really is the quote that makes me say, yep, Alpha you should never trust your children with Alpha. Pearson, flagging the risks, said, like AI, hallucinations and algorithmic biases suggests developing a small pilot with randomized control pile before scaling the model. So basically, like, whoa, Alpha, slow down here. You need to do small pilot studies before doing this. Alpha says their proprietary apps have been developed in such a way that eliminates the possibility of AI hallucinations. I got oceanfront property in Montana to sell you. Would you like to buy it? We have proprietary closed source apps based on more data than anybody's ever done. We have guaranteed no AI hallucinations. You're full of crap. I I don't trust my children with alpha. And so all that to kind of say, here's where alpha has it right. We do not need to send our kids to school for 8 hours. In fact, we need to maybe abolish these laws that require our kids to be in school that long. Now, if you're from a single parent household and like, babysitting's a problem, sure, have the option of a 6-hour school day, whatever else, public funded the same way we're doing, that's fine. But you know what? If you got a parent working at the home and a homemaker and they want to be like, yeah, I just don't think my kid needs to go to school all this time, maybe we should have the option to say, okay, send them to school to learn from the subject matters and then send them home quite a bit earlier. We can take care of the rest of the day. Of course, that's counter to the entire purpose of school, which is to produce an obedient subjective workforce or subordinate workforce. And so that really is one of those things to think about. But at the same time, I look at all of the various homeschoolers, and I've worked with a lot of homeschoolers in my day, looked at a lot of the homeschoolers, and they don't do a lot more than a couple hours of instructional stuff, and the rest of their day is life skills. And who can teach your kid life skills better? Probably you, probably not some random life coach. And that's kind of the thing. So they have it right that you do not need all this instructional model, but we have this weird legal framework in America that forces our kids, which is why we have schools like near Christmas. Do your kids actually get anything done on the 3 days leading up to Christmas? You go to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you have Thursday and Friday, and then the rest of the week, following week, completely off. Do you actually do anything on those Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? You might do a couple of tests on Monday, but like Tuesday and Wednesday, they're doing movies and parties all day long. It's probably better if you get your kids out of the Lord of the Flies environment and maybe go on a ski vacation or something instead. I don't know. But there's our take on education and the AI in the schools. Would you send your children to Alpha's school? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.